Hey everybody, welcome to the video. Let's go over the 7-game MLB DFS slate for today on Draftkings. But before we continue, as always, if you guys could just leave a like, and if you're new to the channel, you might as well hit that subscribe button. I'm here all season long trying to help you guys become better MLB DFS players, and I cover other sports as well. So if you're going to keep coming back to the channel each and every single day, or each and every single week, you might as well hit that subscribe button and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss out whenever I post new content. You can also follow me on social media. I'm at Pennell16 over on Twitter, cpen16 over on IG. Infield sport content over on Patreon, always much appreciated. We got 320 plus people in there, so if you want to hop into the Discord chat or just get access to all the extra content that I put out that I update throughout the entire day, the cheat sheet with the notes and all that fun stuff, the top stacks, data sheets for pitchers and hitters, and projections and all that fun stuff. It's on there, so if you're interested, links in the description below. I'll also be doing my NASCAR live stream at 2 p.m. today if you want to come in, check that out, and try your first NASCAR race. I love doing NASCAR DFS, so come in and check that out if you want. But like I said, links in the description below if you're interested. If not, hey, that's fine. Let's just dive into today's slate. So I think the bats are fun in this slate. The pitching isn't great. I mean, you got two elite pitchers in Yu Darvish and Carlos Carrasco. I put Carrasco on here because he's facing Detroit. He's got a pretty good history versus Detroit, and Detroit just is not good versus right-handed pitching. We just saw Tristan McKenzie have 10 strikeouts tonight, and it was his first major league start versus the Detroit Tigers last night, so I think Carrasco would be perfectly fine here. Yu Darvish, he's an option, but the White Sox, I mean, they packed a ton of power this season. I mean, Abreu's been going off. He's got 4 homers the past 2 days, and he's got a ton of power in that lineup, so I don't love it for Darvish, and also the wind is blowing out in Wrigley, which if you guys don't know how Wrigley works, when the wind's blowing out, the ball will carry. So much more interested in the bats in that game than I am any of the pitchers. So I went Carrasco here with my SP1. Then SP2 is pretty much a wasteland. I mean, I don't like any of these SP2s. Like, you had Dylan Cease versus the Indians, or not versus the Indians, versus the Chicago Cubs. He's 9,300. That I don't like that at all. Tyler Mahle, I believe that's how you say his name. Molly, I believe it's Molly. Ponce de Leon, 7,800. I mean, he's actually gotten some decent strikeout numbers the past couple of games, but he's not going deep into games. I don't even think he's passed 4 innings the past 2 games. He was at 3.1 and 3.2, so I'm not really interested in that at 8K, but I kind of landed on Corbin Burnes here. I think he stands out as the best option of these guys. I mean, I'm not like overly excited about it, but I think he makes some sense. But we'll start up here top with Carlos Carrasco. He comes in at a massive price tag at $10,500, but the way this slate goes, I think he's going to be someone we're going to want to spend up for. He gets that elite matchup versus Detroit. I mean, Vegas is going to check out well for him. 3.48 runs against him, 70% chance for the win, and 6 strikeouts. And if you're looking at his numbers last season, I mean, it's just what typical Carlos Carrasco. He's got a decently high strikeout rate. He's not like a 35 to 40% K rate pitcher, but 28% K rate last season is pretty darn good. 3.5 xFIP, has good control and a 5% walk rate last year. And if you're looking at the main thing is what I really like about Carrasco on this slate is that Detroit is just so bad versus righties. A 29.9% K rate, 170 team ISO, 75 WRC plus. And like I just said, McKenzie just absolutely just ripped apart this lineup. So I think Carlos Carrasco, a veteran that's got plenty of heat on his fastball and has excellent stuff, I think he's going to be totally fine here. So I like Carrasco as my SP1, and I'm also an Indians fan, so anytime I can recommend Indians pitching, I will certainly do so. And then at SP2, I'm kind of landing on Corbin Burnes here. I mean, there might be another option that pops up for me, but right now I'm just kind of liking Corbin Burnes. 7,400, he gets that soft matchup versus the Pirates, who've been pretty bad versus right-handed pitching this season. If you're looking at their splits, I mean, in some cases, they're much worse than Detroit. Only a 117 team ISO, 243 WOBA, and a 51 WRC plus. That is horrendous. And a 24.5% strikeout rate. And Corbin Burnes, if you're looking at his numbers last season, he had a very inflated 9 ERA at 8.82. His xFIP, though, was all the way down to 3.37, which is very drastic. He had a 30% K rate. Did struggle a little bit with control at a 9% walk rate, but, I mean, he's been okay this season if you're just looking at his game log. I guess I could just read it to you guys. So he scored 13, 11, 23, 11, 16. Really hasn't killed you in any of his starts. Now, I don't expect him to go too deep into the game, but his pitch count last start did get all the way up to 83. Now, he's had some walk issues for sure. He's had 3, 2, 3, 3, and 3 in the walk department, but this Pirates lineup doesn't scare me too much. There's some strikeout upside, and Vegas likes him too. Only 3.98 runs against him, 60% chance for the win, and 5 strikeouts. So the way these SP2s look on this slate, he's looking like the best option for me. I'm not really interested in Thornton, Chris Bubich, and Corbin Burnes I like, but Skubal, I don't want to play. Wade LeBlanc versus the Red Sox, no thank you. Zach Godley, no. So, I mean, I'm kind of just landing on this Burns-Carrasco pairing, and I feel like other people will probably end up landing on the same thing as well. So I think we can just move on to the bats now. And I kind of wanted to go through this video a little bit quicker because it is storming hardcore outside, and my dog is shaking uncontrollably, and I feel bad because he's upstairs, because if he's panting, you guys are going to hear it, and I want to get through this video quick because I feel bad because he's probably really scared upstairs. So we'll get to him, but he's a big boy. I think he'll be okay. But we'll start with catcher. We have Chance Sisco at 4,600. Look, Zach Galli is just not a very good pitcher, and I love this game stack today. I like the Red Sox a lot, and I also like the Baltimore Orioles quite a bit as well. And Chance Sisco, we know he's got plenty of power versus righties. I wish he was leading off. I know he was leading off in that one game, but if you see him hitting to the bottom of the order, I think he's still a fine option. Obviously, sucks versus lefties, but versus righties over a 200 ISO. He does strike out quite a bit and has a low batting average, but Zach Galli's not a guy that's going to strike out a lot of bats. Last season, he had a 15% K rate to righties and only 18% to lefties, and over 200 ISO given up to lefties as well. And the Boston pitching staff has just been pretty awful so far this season. It's also a great park to hit in Camden Yards, so I do like the Baltimore Orioles, and I also like the Boston Red Sox as well. And then a couple of other cheap catchers. We have Kevin Plawecki here at 3,100. He gets the matchup versus lefty in Wade LeBlanc. Looking at his splits versus lefties, it's not pretty, but he's cheap enough as long as he cracks the lineup, which I think he should end up making the lineup. But if he does not, obviously we can't play him. But I don't mind the price tag at 3,100 as long as he does make the lineup. I like the Boston stack quite a bit. Team total 5.43 in Vegas, which is one of the highest on the entire slate. Right behind the Indians as of right now, but I'd have to imagine the Cubs will probably end up taking the top spot once that's out, because there's no... Vegas likes to wait when there's like projected to be wind blowing out or blowing in Wrigley. They tend to wait to post that team total, but I would early over-under, but I would assume Chicago is going to be above 6. It was above 6 yesterday, and Dylan Cease is a guy that does struggle with some lefty power, and there's plenty of lefty power in this lineup, so... the Cubs will grade out well for me, especially the lefties, but Plawecki's fine. Then Victor Caratini, 3,000. I believe he had a 2-run RBI double last night. He did fine for his price tag. He's cheap. He's got better splits versus right-handed pitching with a 186 ISO, 270 batting average, and just somewhat okay numbers. I mean, they're not great, but they're fine enough for his price tag. And the wind is projected to be blowing out once again in Wrigley Field, which is quite a big boost to bats. Now, it's not like it's going out 15 to 20 miles per hour, but I think it's supposed to be around 10 miles per hour, which is plenty enough for me to be interested in the bats here. So I like the price tag we get with Caratini. And Dylan Cease, he's a guy that will struggle with lefties. Very tough on righties for the most part in the strikeout department with a 28% K rate last season, but still gives up power to both sides of the plate at 174 ISO, double-digit walk rate. But to lefties, that strikeout rate does drop to 21%, and then the power goes up to 257 ISO and a 380 WOBA last season. So definitely think we can use some lefties here from the Cubs, and they're going to grade out some of the better plays on the entire slate. Speaking of lefties, on the Cubs, we have arguably the best one in Anthony Rizzo at 5,100. Now, he costs an arm and a leg, so he's not going to be as easy to fit in as guys like Kyle Schwarber, Ian Happ, or even Victor Caratini. But if you got the money for him, I'd say go for it, because I like the home run potential here. I like lefties versus Dylan Cease, and Anthony Rizzo crushes right-handed pitching. So, again, if you got the money, I think he obviously makes a lot of sense there. Then Carlos Santana, 4,600. Like the Indians stack on this slate, going against Skubal. I mean, he's supposed to be pretty good, but he wasn't really in his first start, and again, he's a new pitcher, so I'm going to give the edge here to the Indians, who have plenty of good righty bats here. I mean, most of their lineup is switch hitters, like Carlos Santana, Cesar Hernandez, Francisco Lindor, Jose Ramirez. Then you got Franmil Reyes and Jordan Luplow that both have power versus lefties, so I don't think this is going to be the greatest matchup here for Trey Skubal. So I think we can certainly use some Indians, even though I do prefer them versus right-handed pitching for the most part. But Santana's got fine splits versus lefties. Looking at his numbers, a 324 batting average, a low strikeout rate, high walk rate, 227 ISO, 428 on base percentage. I think he's a fine option here. Not going to have any splits for Skubal because, you know, he's a new pitcher, but I think we can certainly use the Indians on this slate. And Vegas would agree, 5.52 runs for the implied team total. Then Michael Chavez, 3,900. He's also eligible at second base as well, but he's got some decent pop versus lefties with a 255 ISO. And Wade LeBlanc, he's not been great this season. And sorry, that flash of lightning scared me. But Wade LeBlanc has not been great this season. Baltimore is a team I like to typically pick on. It's a great park for hitting. You get the guaranteed ninth inning at bats for Boston here since they're on the road. Makes a ton of sense to me. Decent power versus lefties, like I mentioned. And Wade LeBlanc, you want righties versus him for the most part. I mean, he's not great versus either side of the plate, but the walks go down and the strikeout rate goes up when it comes to lefties. But a 319 ISO to lefties and a 220 ISO to righties, but the strikeout rate's down. And I mean, both sides of the plate are in play here, but I did single out the righties for the most part. So, but if you want to go full stack, I wouldn't mind Rafael Devers, as I think he'll probably go on under-owned because of the lefty-on-lefty matchup. Then Cesar Hernandez here at 4,800. He's a bit expensive, so usually he was the guy I like to just throw in there as a cheap option, but now he's 4,800, so you're kind of almost making him a staple of your lineup, which I don't love because he's not the best hitter in the world. But if you're stacking the Indians, it's going to be hard to leave off their leadoff man, and he's a high contact kind of guy. He's not going to pack a ton of power if you're looking at his numbers versus lefties last season. 0.07 ISO to lefties. That's horrendous, but only 11% K rate, and I do like the Indians quite a bit here, so don't mind Hernandez. Then we have two cheaper options. We have Jason Kipnis, 3,400. I love all the lefties here on the Cubs. He's dirt cheap, and he's got some okay pop versus righties. I mean, 200 ISO to righties. I mean, he's got some power, but overall the numbers aren't good. 244 batting average, 91 WRC plus, 311 on base percentage. Kind of gross. 18% K rate's not bad, but I like the price tag, and the Cubs stack just makes a lot of sense to me, especially if the wind is indeed blowing out. Right now it's supposed to. Again, weather can change, but as long as it's blowing out, I think you can load up on these Cubs lefties. Even though it didn't really work out last night, but it's baseball. I mean, sometimes things just don't work out, but I'm willing to go right back to it. Like sometimes Coors Field, it's a bust, but you know, the next night it can score 20, 30 runs. So you gotta have a short memory. And then Colton Wong here should be leading off, and only 3,200 going against Tyler Mahle here. I don't love the Cardinals, but you want lefties versus him because if you're looking at his splits versus righties, pretty darn tough. 50% ground ball rate, 25% K rate, 144 ISO, 294 WOBA. To lefties, 20% K rate, 248 ISO, 8% walk rate, and 364 WOBA. So I like Colton Wong here as a high contact hitter. If you're looking at splits versus righties, I mean, he's not going to pack a ton of power here, but he's leading off, 283 batting average, 339 WOBA, 144 ISO. He's fine at the price tag. He is dirt cheap as well, 3,200. Then going down to third base, we have Jose Ramirez at 5,600. I prefer him versus righties, but the splits aren't drastically different. 192 ISO to lefties, 239 to righties, and these numbers are pretty similar. He's actually got a higher batting average to lefties than he does righties, but only an 8% strikeout rate. I think he's fine for stacking the Indians, but he's super expensive, so I'm probably only playing him in Indian stacks and tournaments rather than cash games because it's going to be tough to pay $5,600 for J-Ram. Marmo Gonzalez, 4,100. Is he not eligible at second? I could have swore he was eligible at second base just yesterday, but I guess that is not the case anymore. But potentially batting cleanup here versus lefties. He's got better splits versus lefties with the 300 batting average last season. Doesn't strike out a whole lot versus them. A little bit of power as well at 167 ISO, but I think the Twins righties do make some sense here. You could also look at Miguel Sano and guys like that, but I'm not in love with the Twins today. I like it when they face righties better because you got Max Kepler, you got Eddie Rosario, which I love playing versus righties, and Jorge Polanco, but he's a fine option for some decent value. Then Matt Carpenter, pretty much similar reasons to Colton Wong, but Matt Carpenter does have more power in his bat. He's got more home run potential, and if you're looking at his numbers, 177 ISO to righties last season, a high fly ball rate, does strike out quite a bit, and it's a low batting average guy as well, but there's some decent upside there at 3,800. Then going down to shortstop, we have Frankie Lindor at 5,300. This could be more of a spend up spot for me. I didn't see much value. I like that shortstop, so I could see myself spending up at short because the outfield, there's a lot of good value in the outfield today. Then catcher, I mean, we always got value at catcher. Then second base, there's some good cheap options as well. So I think shortstop's probably going to be more of a spend-up spot here. But like Lindor, he's good versus lefties and righties. Prefer him versus righties, but the Indian stack is one of the top options on the slate versus Scooble. Xander Bogaerts, 5,200. I like him a lot, especially if you're stacking. Like if you're stacking Boston, you go Bogaerts. If you're stacking the Indians, you go Lindor. If you had to pick one for cash, I'm probably going to go Bogaerts because I like the righty on lefty matchup here versus Wade LeBlanc. Xander Bogaerts has great numbers versus lefties with the 261 ISO, 130 WRC plus, 291 batting average, and I like the Boston stack here, especially the righties. And they have one of the highest team totals on the slate. Great park per hitting, guaranteed ninth inning at bats. Vegas likes them, so I think they make plenty of sense there. Jorge Polanco, 4,700. He's been leading off versus lefties, so I don't see why that would change. Now he's actually got better splits versus righties than he does versus lefties. If you're looking at his numbers last year, 153 ISO to lefties, but 207 to righties. And you're going to see dark green bars here versus righties, like pretty dark green bars. To lefties, those go from green to shades of yellow and orange and even some red. But I still think he's fine. I wish he was a little bit less expensive than 4,700, but Again, I'm probably spending up at the shortstop position. And then Javi Baez, 4,500. So I like him better versus lefties. Like, he's got amazing numbers versus lefties. Righties, I mean, he's still got some good power versus them, but the numbers do drop off a little bit. But if the wind's blowing out, I think every Cub is viable here. And Dylan Cease, while he does have a much higher strikeout rate to righties, he still gives up power to them with a 174 ISO. But prefer the lefties, but 4,500 for Baez isn't too bad of a price tag, especially if the wind's blowing out. We're going to have elite hitting conditions. Then dropping down to the outfield, we have JD Martinez and Nelson Cruz, both going up against lefties, which whenever these guys are facing lefties, they're going to be some of the top home run calls in the entire slate. JD Martinez is just a lefty murderer. 242 WRC plus last season, 482 ISO, 500 on base percentage, 404 batting average. I mean, these numbers are like, they shouldn't even be real. So obviously I like JD. Wade LeBlanc does give power to righties. Then Nelson Cruz, again, pretty much JD-like numbers here, just a little bit off, a little bit less than JD, but Cruz is better versus righties, so we'll give him the edge there. But or not better, he's not like himself better versus righties, but like JD Martinez to righties, Nelson Cruz definitely hasn't beaten that category. But they're both fine options here. Like if you're stacking some Twins, you use Cruz. If you're stacking the Red Sox, you use JD Martinez. It's simple as that. And then Franmil Reyes, his price is getting up there, but he's been swinging a hot bat, and he's got power to both sides of the plate here. Like the Indians stack, Vegas has him as one of the best stacks on the entire slate. They're probably going to come in right behind the Cubs once their total comes out, but I could also see Boston creeping up a little bit as well. But both are fine options. I can't see the White Sox being too high, especially going up against Yu Darvish, but I like Reyes here. I mean, 240 ISO to lefties. I mean, solid power numbers. He does strike out quite a bit, but I'll take the power upside at 4,700, but really only for stacking the Indians because that price, they get up there, and I'd rather just play Luplow at 3,400, to be honest, if you're like talking cash games. Then Kevin Pillar, 3,800, going to be leading off versus the lefty, and Wade LeBlanc, he typically leads off instead of Alex Verdugo when Boston faces a lefty, and whenever they face a righty, Verdugo leads off, so just kind of switches there. But Pillar's got some decent numbers versus lefties. Last season, he had 241 ISO, which is a pretty decent pop, and only an 8% strikeout rate, so I like the high contact right there, and a little bit of power as well. And I prefer the righty bats versus Wade LeBlanc. And then two of my favorite plays on the slate here, we have Kyle Schwarber and Ian Happ. Now, Kyle Schwarber, 3,800. I don't think he did anything last night. I think he maybe scored 2 points. Maybe he walked. I think that's it. But like the lefty power here versus Dylan Cease. The wind's supposed to be blowing out in Chicago, which is going to be great for hitting conditions here. And love all the lefties. And Schwarber's just way too cheap, especially if he's going to be batting cleanup. I mean, which I would imagine he would be batting cleanup. I don't see why that would change. But looking at his numbers versus righties, I mean, some really good splits here. 300 ISO, 367 WOBA, 552 slugging, and just really good numbers. Lower batting average and a higher strikeout rate, but I like the lefties here versus Dylan Cease. That's what he struggles against, and I like the price tag a lot. Same exact thing goes for Ian Happ. He's got better splits versus right-handed pitching. 318 ISO last season, and near 600 slugging, and overall just really good numbers. And at 3,500, I'm pretty sure he grades out as the best value play on the entire slate for me. And then Jordan Luplow, honestly, Luplow's got like JD Martinez and Nelson Cruz like numbers versus lefties. He actually had a higher WRC plus to lefties last season than Nelson Cruz did. 422 ISO, 474 WOBA, and just overall really, really good numbers. So I like Luplow for cheap versus the lefty Scooble. Then Jason Hayward, again, if you just want to use another cheap lefty on the Cubs, I think he is certainly viable. If you're looking at his splits versus righties, over a 200 ISO, 115 WRC plus. Lower strikeout rate, and again, I like the lefties here versus Dylan Cease. But that's going to be it for the video, guys. I hope it was helpful. If it was, remember to leave a like. If you're new to the channel, hit that subscribe button. Really helps me out. Really appreciate it. Check out the next card video if you haven't already, and I'll see you guys in the next video.